The dust rose in amber clouds beneath the afternoon sun. Silver Creek's grand cutting horse competition drew crowds from 3 counties every August. Ranchers in starched shirts and polished boots, families with children clutching snow cones, gamblers exchanging bills in the shadows beneath the bleachers. The air smelled of livestock and grilled meat and anticipation, that electric charge before something important begins. Toby Mitchell stood at the competitor's gate, one hand resting on Patch's neck. The boy was 17, lean in the way of someone who worked hard and ate little. His clothes were clean but threadbare, jeans patched at both knees, a shirt that had belonged to someone bigger, boots held together with duct tape and prayer. His face bore the weathered quality of someone who'd grown up fast, eyes older than his years, jaw set with the kind of determination that comes from having nothing left to lose. Patch stood beside him, small and still. The horse was barely 14 hands, compact and unremarkable at first glance. His coat was a patchwork of scars, white lines across his shoulders, a healed gash on his hindquarters, a droopy left ear that hung at an odd angle. His mane was cropped short and uneven. One eye had a clouded corner, suggesting old injury. He was brown with irregular white markings, the kind of coloring that suggested mixed breeding, no particular lineage, nothing special. Toby had found him 6 months ago at the kill pen outside Bridgewater. The horse dealer had wanted $75. Toby had 50 in crumpled bills, everything he'd saved from mucking stalls at the Sterling Ranch and doing odd jobs around town. The dealer had looked at the money, then at the horse, then back at Toby. "You're doing him a favor, kid. That one's used up. Got maybe a week before the truck comes." Toby had handed over the money without speaking. Now, standing in the competitor's gate with the crowd's noise washing over them, Toby leaned close to Patch's good ear. "Just like we practiced, you and me, that's all that matters." Patch's ear swiveled toward his voice. The horse's dark eye found Toby's face, and something passed between them. Understanding, trust, the kind of bond that forms when 2 broken things recognize each other. The entry fee had cost Toby 3 weeks' wages. The $10,000 prize would fix Grandpa's roof before winter. Maybe with enough left over for the medical bills that kept arriving in envelopes Toby pretended not to see. Grandpa's cough had gotten worse. The house leaked in 7 places. They'd been eating oatmeal and potatoes for 2 months. This competition was their last shot at survival, but nobody in that arena thought a boy and a broken horse stood a chance. But real quick before the gate opens, if you love stories about underdogs proving the world wrong, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the rest of the story. Now, let's see what happened when the announcer called their name. Toby needed this. The announcer's voice crackled through the speakers, a jovial boom that carried across the arena. "Next up, we have young Toby Mitchell on. Let's see here. A horse called Patch. Local boy, first-time competitor." The crowd's murmur rose as Toby led Patch into the arena. The space was vast and intimidating, a rectangle of packed dirt surrounded by wooden fences, bleachers rising on 3 sides, the judges' stand elevated at the far end. Flags hung limp in the still air. The sun hammered down, turning everything stark and bright. Toby swung into the saddle. Patch stood rock still while Toby settled, found his seat, gathered the reins. The horse's body felt small and solid between his legs, muscles coiled with readiness. The murmuring grew louder. Toby heard fragments of conversation from the nearest bleachers. "That's supposed to be a cutting horse? Looks half-starved. Kid's got nerve, I'll give him that." Then a voice cut through all the others, amplified and dripping with theatrical amusement. "Hold on now, hold on." Mr. Clayton Sterling stood in the judge's box, microphone in hand, his expression a mixture of disbelief and condescension. He was a big man, 60-something, but still imposing, with silver hair and a face tanned to leather from decades in the sun. His clothes were expensive, custom boots, a shirt with pearl snaps, a belt buckle the size of a dinner plate. Everything about him screamed money and authority and absolute certainty in his own superiority. He owned half of Silver Creek, the biggest ranch, the finest horses, the loyalty of anyone who mattered. He'd won the grand cutting competition 7 years running on horses that cost more than most people's houses. Now he stared at Toby and Patch with open mockery. "Son, I think you made a wrong turn. This is a competition for horses, not for dog food." His voice boomed through the speakers, drawing laughter from sections of the crowd. "That skeleton you're sitting on looks like it's about to collapse. Do us all a favor and get it out of my arena before we have to call the rendering truck." More laughter, louder now, cruel and casual. Toby felt heat rise in his face, felt Patch shift beneath him, responding to his tension. He forced himself to breathe slowly, to unclench his jaw. Don't respond, just ride. But Sterling wasn't finished. He turned to the judges beside him, still speaking into the microphone, voice dripping with false concern. "Gentlemen, I move we disqualify this entry on grounds of, well, basic decency. It's borderline animal cruelty making that creature work in its condition." The head judge, a weathered man named Frank Domingo, frowned. "Now, Clayton, the boy paid his entry fee. He's got a right to embarrass himself? A right to waste our time?" Sterling's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Look at that horse. It's half the size of a proper cutting horse. Probably got more diseases than this. County shelter. The kid's out of his depth and doesn't even know it." From the stands, Toby heard more laughter, saw people pointing, felt 1,000 eyes on him and Patch, judging them, finding them wanting. His hands tightened on the reins. Patch's ear swiveled back, listening, waiting. Toby knew he should leave, knew that Sterling's words were designed to humiliate him into quitting, knew that someone with his lack of resources and connections couldn't win against someone like Sterling anyway. The whole thing had been a desperate hope, a fantasy that hard work and heart could overcome money and power. But then he looked down at Patch's scarred neck, at the droopy ear, at the visible ribs beneath the patchy coat. Remembered the kill pen. Remembered the dealer's words. That one's used up. Everyone had written Patch off as worthless, just like everyone had written Toby off when his parents died and left him orphaned at 12, just like they'd written off Grandpa when the ranch failed and age caught up with him. Toby had spent his whole life being underestimated, overlooked, dismissed as nothing special. So had Patch. Maybe that's exactly why they belonged here. He straightened in the saddle, met Sterling's gaze across the arena, and spoke loud enough to carry without the microphone. "I paid my entry fee. I'm riding." The laughter died down. The arena went quieter. Sterling's smile faded into something harder, colder. "Suit yourself, kid. But when that nag gives out halfway through and you're crying in the dirt, don't say I didn't warn you." He tossed the microphone back to the announcer and sat down in the judge's box, settling onto his expensive stallion, a massive bay gelding worth more than Toby would make in 5 years. The horse was beautiful, all sleek muscle and proud bearing, everything Patch wasn't. The announcer cleared his throat awkwardly. "Right then. Toby Mitchell on Patch. The clock will start when the calf is released. Rider has 2.5 minutes to demonstrate cutting ability. May the best horse win." Toby gathered his reins, felt Patch's body tense with readiness beneath him. The crowd settled into expectant silence, curious now, despite themselves, waiting to see the poor boy fail, waiting to watch the underdog get crushed. And then the gate opened. But what emerged wasn't the expected calf. The sound hit first, a bellow of rage that vibrated through the arena like thunder. Then came the beast. The bull erupted from the holding pen in a fury of muscle and horn and murderous intent. Not the manageable calf meant for cutting demonstrations, but the rogue bull Sterling kept for the final championship round. 2,000 pounds of aggression bred for bucking and violence. Someone had failed to secure the latch. The bull's eyes rolled white with fury. Its head swung low, massive horns gleaming in the sunlight. It spotted movement. The judges stand, Sterling on his expensive stallion, and charge with the single-minded purpose of destruction. The crowd's collective gasp became a scream. Sterling's stallion saw the bull coming and lost all composure. The beautiful, expensive, well-trained horse reared violently, eyes rolling in terror. Sterling tried to regain control, but the stallion bucked and twisted with panicked strength. Sterling fell. He hit the dirt hard, the impact driving air from his lungs, dust exploding around him. The stallion bolted for the far gate, leaving its rider sprawled defenseless in the dirt, with a 2,000-pound bull charging directly at him. Time seemed to slow and accelerate simultaneously. The judges scrambled backward in their elevated stand. The crowd screamed warnings that Sterling couldn't hear through his dazed confusion. Men shouted for someone to do something, but the bull was moving too fast, covering ground in thunderous strides, and no one was close enough, brave enough, fast enough to intervene. Sterling rolled onto his hands and knees, shaking his head, trying to orient himself. He looked up just as the bull closed the final 30 yards. His face went white. Toby didn't think, didn't calculate odds or consider consequences. He simply reacted the way he'd been trained through 6 months of working with Patch, through countless hours in empty fields, teaching the scarred horse to cut and turn and respond to the slightest pressure of leg and rein. He drove his heels into Patch's sides. The small horse exploded forward, not the tentative trot of a broken-down animal, not the struggling gait of something used up and worthless, but a burst of speed so sudden and powerful that several people in the front row actually gasped. Patch ate up the distance to Sterling in heartbeats, his compact body uncoiling with shocking athleticism, his ears pinned flat against his skull, his eyes locked onto the bull with laser focus. Every muscle in his body aligned toward a single purpose. The bull was 15 yards from Sterling when Patch cut across its path, 10 yards when Patch planted his hooves and slid sideways, throwing up a wall of dust. 5 yards when Patch dropped his shoulder into the dirt and positioned himself directly between the bull and its target. The bull tried to dodge left. Patch mirrored the movement with supernatural precision, his body low and coiled, blocking the angle. The bull feinted right. Patch moved before the bull committed, reading the animal's body language with an instinct that seemed to transcend training. It was a dance, brutal and beautiful. The massive bull seeking violence, the small horse denying every attempt with movements so quick and precise they looked choreographed. Patch's hooves carved patterns in the dirt. His body stayed low, aggressive, challenging. The bull stopped, confused, frustrated, facing a creature a quarter its size that refused to yield, refused to run, refused to let it pass. Patch held his ground, ears still pinned, every line of his body radiating controlled ferocity. The droopy ear, the scars, the patchy coat, none of it mattered. In that moment, he looked exactly like what he was, a warrior. The arena had gone absolutely silent. Toby sat motionless in the saddle, hands light on the reins, letting Patch work. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat ran down his spine. He could feel the horse's breathing, rapid but controlled, could sense the readiness in Patch's coiled muscles. Sterling had scrambled backward during the confrontation, putting distance between himself and the bull. Now he sat in the dirt, safe but shaking, staring at the scene before him with an expression somewhere between shock and disbelief. The bull snorted, pawed the ground once, then turned and trotted toward the far gate. The fight gone from it, dominance established by the smaller animal through nothing but courage and skill. Only then did the arena breathe again. Men rushed forward to secure the bull, to check on Sterling, to close gates and restore order. But every eye kept returning to the boy and the scarred horse standing in the center of the arena, both of them absolutely still now, dust settling around them like gold in the afternoon light. A figure stood in the judge's box, not Sterling, who was being helped to his feet by assistants, but an older man, rail-thin and weathered as old leather, wearing a battered Stetson and a bolo tie. He'd been listed as a visiting judge from Texas, someone brought in to ensure fairness in the competition. He walked to the microphone slowly, his movements deliberate. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades spent with horses. "I need everyone to stay quiet for a moment." The crowd obeyed. The old judge's eyes never left Patch. He descended from the judge's stand and walked across the arena, his boots kicking up small clouds with each step. Toby felt a flutter of uncertainty as the man approached, but he held his ground. The judge stopped 10 feet away, studying Patch with an intensity that made Toby uncomfortable. The horse stood calmly, sides heaving slightly from exertion, but otherwise composed. "Son," the judge said quietly, "where did you get this horse?" "Kill pen, 6 months ago, outside Bridgewater." "And before that, you know anything about his history?" "No, sir. Dealer said he'd been through a few owners. Nobody wanted him." The judge nodded slowly. He moved closer, his eyes traveling over Patch's body, the scars, the compact build, the way the horse stood with weight distributed perfectly, ready to move in any direction. "What you just saw," the judge said, his voice rising to address the crowd, What this horse just did. I haven't witnessed that in 40 years of working with cutting horses. He turned in a slow circle, making sure everyone could hear. That crouch, the way he dropped his shoulder and locked onto that bull, the reading of movement, the instant response. That's not something you can train. That's breeding. That's instinct passed down through. Bloodlines so pure and so rare that most people thought they were extinct. The crowd was absolutely silent now. That, the judge continued, pointing at Patch, is the Ghost Dancer Crouch, named after a stallion that won every major cutting competition in the Southwest back in the 1950s and 60s. Ghost Dancer sired a line of horses that were unbeatable, but the bloodline disappeared after a barn fire in 1973. Everyone assumed it was lost. He walked closer to Patch, his weathered hand reaching out to touch the horse's neck, with something approaching reverence. This animal carries that blood. I'd stake my reputation on it. The way he moves, the instinct, the courage. This is a Ghost Dancer descendant. Probably got sold through kill pens when someone didn't recognize what they had. Ended up forgotten, used up, written off as worthless. The judge turned to face the crowd, his expression fierce. Shows what people know about judging value. Sterling had regained his feet, dust coating his expensive clothes, his face pale beneath the tan. He walked forward on unsteady legs, waving away the people trying to help him. His eyes moved between Toby, Patch, and the old judge. "Marshal," Sterling said, his voice strained. "You're saying that horse is... what exactly?" The judge, Marshal Calhoun, Toby now remembered from the program, fixed Sterling with a look that carried no warmth. "I'm saying that boy just saved your life riding a horse you called dog food. A horse that's worth more than that fancy stallion of yours. Worth more than your whole stable combined, if I'm right about his bloodline." Sterling's face cycled through several emotions. Shock, disbelief, calculation. Then his expression settled into something determined. He walked toward Toby, pulling out his checkbook as he moved. His hands still shook slightly, but his voice had regained its authoritative tone. "Son, Toby, I misjudged you. And your horse. I was wrong, and I'm man enough to admit it." He clicked open a pen. "That animal clearly has value I didn't recognize. I'd like to make you an offer. Name your price. Whatever you need. 10,000, 20. I'll write the check right now." The crowd murmured. Heads turned to watch Toby's response. Toby looked down at Sterling's checkbook, at the man's expensive clothes now ruined with dirt, at the face that had mocked him minutes ago, and now wore an expression of barely concealed desperation. Then he looked at Patch, at the scars on his neck, at the droopy ear, at the dark eye that had watched Toby every day for 6 months, that had trusted him when the world had given up on both of them. He remembered the kill pen, remembered having $50 and a desperate need to save something, to prove that broken things could be more than their brokenness. Remembered feeding Patch by hand that first week when the horse had been too weak to eat properly. Remembered the slow transformation as good food and patient care brought strength back to wasted muscles. Remembered Grandpa saying, "Some things aren't meant to be sold, boy. Some bonds run deeper than money." Toby dismounted, put himself between Sterling and Patch. "He's not for sale." Sterling blinked. "I'm offering you more money than you've probably seen in your life. Enough to fix your grandfather's roof, pay his medical bills, set yourself up properly. Be smart about this." "I am being smart." Toby's hand rested on Patch's neck. "He's not merchandise. He's family." "Family?" Sterling's voice rose with frustration. "It's a horse, an animal. I'm trying to help you here, trying to make up for earlier. Take the money, buy yourself a decent truck, get your life sorted. Don't be stupid about this." "I'm not being stupid. I'm being loyal." Toby met Sterling's eyes without flinching. 6 months ago, everyone said Patch was worthless, used up, better off dead. I took him anyway because I saw something everyone else missed. He wasn't worthless. He was just waiting for someone to believe in him. The words hung in the air. Toby felt the crowd's attention like weight on his shoulders, but he didn't look away from Sterling. "You said he was dog food. You tried to throw me out of this arena because you judged both of us and found us worthless. Now he's valuable, so you want him. But value doesn't work that way. He was worth everything when you thought he was worth nothing. That doesn't change just because other people finally see it. Sterling's face darkened. You're making a mistake. That horse could set you up for life, could change everything for you. He already has. Toby turned away from Sterling, toward Patch. Just not the way you mean. Marshal Calhoun stepped forward, his weathered face creased with what might have been approval. The boy's made his choice, Clayton. Respect it. Sterling stood frozen for a moment, checkbook still open, pen still ready. Then slowly, his shoulders slumped. He closed the checkbook and tucked it away. I owe you my life. The words came out quiet, stripped of bravado. That bull would have killed me. You didn't have to help, not after how I treated you. Toby shrugged. Wasn't about you, was about doing the right thing. Sterling nodded slowly. When he spoke again, his voice carried something new. Humility. I'm sorry for what I said, for how I treated you. You've got more character in your little finger than I've shown in years. He paused. The prize money, for the competition. It's yours. After what I just witnessed, there's no question who won today. I didn't even get to do the cutting demonstration. Don't need to. Marshal Calhoun cut in. What you just did was the finest cutting work I've seen in 4 decades. Bull cutting isn't in the rulebook, but it should be. Far as I'm concerned, you won the moment that horse put himself between Clayton and death. The other judges nodded agreement. Sterling pulled out his checkbook again, wrote quickly, tore out the check, and handed it to Toby. 10,000, as promised. And if you ever need anything, feed for that horse, veterinary care, anything, you come find me. It's the least I can do. Toby took the check with hands that trembled slightly. $10,000. Grandpa's roof, the medical bills, food that wasn't oatmeal. Thank you. Sterling nodded, then walked away toward where his stallion waited, caught and calmed by handlers. He moved like a man who'd learned something hard and necessary. Shoulders no longer quite so straight, swagger diminished. The crowd began to clap, slowly at first, then building. The sound washed over the arena, not the cruel laughter from before, but genuine appreciation. Respect. Toby swung back into the saddle. Patch stood calm beneath him. The crisis passed, the work done. Just a small, scarred horse with a droopy ear, waiting patiently for whatever came next. Marshal Calhoun approached one final time, placing a weathered hand on Patch's shoulder. You take care of him. That bloodline deserves to continue, deserves to be known again. I will. And son, don't let anyone ever tell you that heart and loyalty don't matter. Money and pedigree, they're fine things. But heart, that's what makes legends. Evening came to Silver Creek with golden light that turned the mountains purple. Toby rode Patch slowly through town, past the feed store where Mrs. Henderson waved from the window, past the diner where old men raised coffee cups in salute, past the courthouse where the flag hung limp in the still air. Word had spread already. That's how small towns worked. The poor orphan boy and his worthless horse. The millionaire rancher's public humiliation and private redemption. The reveal of a bloodline thought extinct. Stories like that didn't stay quiet. Toby turned onto the gravel road that led to Grandpa's house. The small structure came into view, white paint peeling, porch sagging slightly, blue tarps covering the worst roof leaks. Home. Grandpa sat in his rocking chair on the porch, a blanket over his lap despite the warm evening. He was 83, frail as paper, but his eyes were sharp as they watched Toby approach. Toby dismounted, tied Patch to the porch rail, and climbed the creaking steps. He pulled out the check and handed it to his grandfather without speaking. Grandpa looked at it for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. You won. We won, me and Patch. Heard some version of the story from Randy Peters. He called from town. Said you caused quite the stir. Said Clayton Sterling tried to buy your horse and you turned him down flat. Toby sat on the porch step, suddenly exhausted. Yeah, good. Grandpa folded the check carefully. Some things can't be bought. Your parents understood that. Raised you to understand it too, I hope. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink lower. Patch stood tied to the rail, one hip cocked, eyes half closed, the picture of contentment. You know what I'm proudest of? Grandpa said after a while. Not the money, though. Lord knows we need it. Not even that you won. I'm proud that when everyone told you that horse was worthless, you saw different. You recognized value where others saw trash. That's wisdom, Toby. That's the kind of character that matters. Toby watched Patch, remembering the kill pen, remembering the first time those dark eyes had met his, remembering 6 months of careful rebuilding, both the horse and himself. He saved me as much as I saved him, Toby said quietly. That's usually how it works with the important things. Salvation's rarely one-directional. The sun touched the horizon, painting the world in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere in town, Sterling was likely examining his expensive horses with new eyes, understanding for the first time that value couldn't be measured only in dollars and bloodlines. Somewhere in Texas, Marshall Calhoun was probably telling the story of the ghost dancer descendant to anyone who'd listen. But here, on a sagging porch with a leaking roof that would soon be fixed, Toby felt something he hadn't felt in the 5 years since his parents died. Peace. The kind that comes from knowing you made the right choice, even when the wrong choice would have been easier. The kind that comes from honoring loyalty over profit, heart over practicality. Patch lifted his head, turned to look at Toby with that steady, trusting gaze. The droopy ear, the scars, the compact body, none of it mattered. He was exactly what he'd always been. Priceless, worth saving, worth keeping, worth everything. And in the fading light of a Silver Creek evening, that truth felt solid as the ground beneath Toby's feet, unshakable as the mountains watching over them all. Some things, he'd learned, were too valuable to sell, some bonds too sacred to break. And sometimes, the things the world called worthless turned out to be the most precious gifts of all.